would you say as a content creator looking to get a brand deal, would you say the best thing is to reach out to them?
The best thing, if you want to get brand deals, if you have 10,000 followers, you're not monetizing from brand deals, you can only do two things. I had a Facebook monetization platform where I was actually partners with about 1,000 Facebook pages, including some Hollywood celebrities, a lot of publishers from around the world, Facebook publishers. And one day, a sizable amount of money showed up in our bank account. And when I saw it, I didn't understand where it came from. And it was, I wish I could give you the magic pill to tell you how to make it so people stop thinking of you or stop caring about what people think. But from my perspective, the way to do it is...
What's going on, friends? Thank you so much for tuning in for another great episode of Tom Talk Success, where we bring you a lot of different entrepreneurs, investors, real estate people, and just people that want to get better and want to level up. And today I'm super excited. I have Gary with me. Me and Gary met, I think recently, right? About a month ago in one of the events. And we just connected, and I kind of looked you up on Instagram and, wanted to bring you just to share with my audience more about content creation, social media. I feel like with my podcast, I didn't have any podcast in that niche. So thank you so much for joining us. Pleasure to have you. Gary, you started, about a couple of years ago, like a decade or so, maybe more, in the social media space.
Actually, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It was great how we met at the event.
Yeah.
It was in the Keys and at a mutual friends event.
In the big mansion over there.
In the big mansion, we met at the event. It was Hofit and Alvaro's event.
Correct. Shout out to them.
Shout out to them. It was actually more than 10 years ago. So I'm just trying to pinpoint when exactly it was with social media, because I've been in online media of some shape or form since late 1999.
Oh, wow.
Actually, not in social media, in online media, actually, as an entrepreneur in late 1999, as an employee in 97. So that's when I first kind of, had exposure to online media. But specifically social media, I would say that the first exposure I had to social media was back in 2014 when I had a Facebook monetization platform where I was actually partners with about 1,000 Facebook pages, including some Hollywood celebrities, a lot of publishers from around the world, Facebook publishers. So that's when I first started. And then in 2017, so I did that for probably about two and a half years, the Facebook monetization platform. And then in 2017, my wife Valeria, she started creating content, and then I got involved. I think probably 6 months to a year after she started.
What was some of your, what kind of brought you to this space? Is that something you kind of liked or just got into it?
It was just opportunity. I mean, online media in general, or specifically to social media?
Specifically, I guess, to social media.
Yeah, I mean, what brought me to that was my wife. My wife was she was creating content, and one day a sizable amount of money showed up in our bank account. And when I saw it, I didn't understand where it came from, and it was $10,000. And it's not a small amount of money. I went and I asked. Eventually, I asked Valeria. She was kind of the last person I asked in terms of how the money got there, because I didn't realize.
Yeah.
I thought she was just doing something as a hobby. I didn't, I think she had sponsorship revenue come in, like brand deals come in prior to that $10,000, but it was in the form of a couple of $100, here and there. So I didn't really notice what was going on. But the $10,000 I noticed, and so I asked her about it, and she explained to me what she was doing, and she explained to me that a brand had paid her to integrate their content, to integrate their brand into her content. So that's how we got into it. It was opportunistic. I was coming off of the tail end of my Facebook monetization platform because Facebook actually they changed their policies. That was shut down. They actually called us in to let us know that we can't continue. We actually went to their office. They called us. We went to New York because we were working directly with them, and they told us that. We can't do it anymore, because at that time, 20% of Facebook's total audience was coming through our website, which was too much for them. And
it's pretty big.
It's pretty big, and that was after the data leak with Cambridge Analytica, and Zuckerberg had got back from Capitol Hill, And so they said we can't have this much of our traffic going to like a single entity outside of it was Facebook at the time, it wasn't Meta yet. And so we were just coming off the tail end of that. So I had a pretty good idea about just like data in general in terms of how people consume content. We were creating content like in the written word. We weren't doing video content. And then Valeria, kind of this happened. I looked into Valeria's data. She shared it with me. And she already had like, tens of thousands of subscribers on YouTube, tens of thousands of subscribers on Instagram. And when I looked at the data and I really dove into it, especially coming from about 2.5 years from that space with Facebook, the data made a lot of sense to me. And I also thought and continue to believe that my wife is super talented. So at that point I said, listen, I think,
there is something here.
Yeah, there's something here. And I firmly believe that this was the future of all media. And, I've been right. Like, even if you look at this election, we've never seen anything like this before. The fact that both candidates are doing all of these podcasts, they're doing traditional media, but people like myself, people like you, you're much younger than I am. You are consuming content not so much from the CNNs of the world. You may get it here and there, but you're consuming content from social media in the form of long form podcasts, short form derived from the podcast in the form of reels, shorts, and TikTok. So it's an amazing time, the way that that we consume content and the way it's influencing everything. So kind of back to what I was saying was that I really saw this, and I continue to see this as not even the future of media. It's the present. It's all here. So yeah, that's how I kind of got into it. I really felt and continue to feel strongly about social media.
I mean, pretty interesting story, I would say. The fact that you joined, I guess your wife already have done it, right? She been kind of in this industry before, and you kind of joined and, saw the opportunity and decided, what, we can go to the next level with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, she wasn't in social media, because social media back in 2017, Instagram was already at scale. There were already creators with millions and millions of followers, but it was, it was juvenile in terms of the infrastructure and the opportunities and the brand's involvement in terms of sponsorship. It was very small compared to what it is now. It's evolved at an exponential rate. But before that, Valeria was a professional model since the age of 15. Wow. So she had already been a model for 6 or 7 years. And she didn't do runway, she did catalog, but she had already worked for a lot of the big brands. So yeah.
So let's talk about it. Let's dive a little deeper to branding, right? Like, there is a lot of people that are going to watch this audience, and I guess the majority of them, are looking into it, and they're thinking about building a brand, thinking about how can they expand their brand. What were some of your tips?
Personal
Correct,
brand?
yeah.
Okay.
What are some of your personal tips to build a personal brand?
I mean, there's a lot, right? There's a lot. First of all, you have to understand who you are and kind of, what you stand for. When people ask me, how do I start? How do I build my personal brand? First of all, you have to identify that, why you're doing it. I think that's the first question that you need to ask yourself. Like, why do you want to do this? Are you a hobbyist, which is fine? Do you just want a creative platform, like a creative outlet that you can put content out onto? Or do you want to do it as a business? Or do you have an existing business that you've now realized, which a lot of people are coming to this realization, you've now realized that you have to create a personal brand because that's your top of funnel, meaning that's how you get discovered by potential customers to then feed into your business, whether you do contracting or you're a realtor or you sell cars or whatever it is that you do, right? So first of all, establish why is it that you want a personal brand. And once you establish why is it you want a personal brand, then your actions have to map to the creation of that personal brand. So what I like to do when I talk with people and when they come to me for advice on how to start and grow their personal brand, I like to do an assessment, and I like to understand, first of all, what are they good at from like subject matter, like what are they good at? Are you a good motorcycle mechanic? Are you, whatever it may be, right? Yep. What are you good at? Number two, what is in demand in the market? Like what does the market need? Like what's the size of the potential audience?
Where can you fit?
Not where can you fit? What's the size of the audience, right? So if you told me like I want to become a creator and I want to talk about everything to do with accordions, You probably don't even know what an accordion is.
Yeah, correct.
It's a musical instrument, right? It's like
Yeah. No. Yeah.
right? So if you told me that I would say, okay, I mean, that's great. So your knowledge of that, like let's say you're good at that, you're just kind of limited in terms of the size of that market. So again, when somebody wants to create a personal brand, I like to look at what they're good at, what the market is what they're interested in, what they're good at, and what the market is in demand for. And so once we kind of have a cross section of those kind of three components, then people need to decide like what are going to be their content pillars or the content verticals that they're going to be discussing. So for example, with Valeria, it was fashion. Fashion was one of them. Lifestyle in general, parenting. Now she has a podcast called Not Alone, and that podcast talks, to women about all of the things that, women, as they kind of, go from like their 20s to their 30s and their 40s, the common challenges that women have. So she has a podcast about that. So that's what I go into with people, and I try to understand, why do you want to do it? And then based on why do you want to do it, what are you good at? What are you interested in? And where's the market demand? And then once we do that, then you have to come up with a content plan. Again, your question is how do you develop a personal brand? Once you do that analysis, like, as to the why, and then those three, cross-reference those three components, then you have to come up with a content plan. And then you have to decide, okay, what are the formats going to be? You have to study the market. You have to look at what other people are doing, who have already success in your respective kind of content pillars. And then you have to execute against that plan.
How important it is, would you say, first of all, I appreciate the answer. How important it is, would you say, in today's days, Instagram and social media and YouTube and like literally all those platforms for building a brand, businesses, whatever you are, how important, like how do you see the importance of it?
It's not a question of importance. It's a question of that's where the attention is. So that's just where it is. So it's not a question of importance. It's just a necessity, right? It's like saying, how important is it to be able to take a credit card? How, it's important.
So you're saying it's a must in today's days?
Of course.
So like people that see it, like they need to understand that it's a must. Like it's not a question.
So we have, look, it's a must. There's no other way. The thing is that you as a business, regardless of the business that you're in, you are competing against other people who are on social media at scale. Now, that being said, there's different kind of levels of importance. If you have a service or a product, if you are an entrepreneur with a service or a product that is consumer facing, then it's essential. If you are an entrepreneur with a product or a service that is, business facing, like business to business, it's less important, but I think it's still very, very important. With that being said, there are probably the wealthiest and most successful people I know, they're not on social media at all.
Which is also crazy.
Is also crazy. No, but it's different. They do different things. There are people who do, for example, venture capital, right? There's people who do venture capital and they're billionaires that nobody even knows about. They themselves are not on social media. So the goal is to be, I would think, is to be wealthy and successful and anonymous, right? And that's great. But even those people with their big venture capital funds, they still have people who are the face of the company.
Correct.
Right? So, and those people are like Ray Dalio's on social media, right?
He's huge.
He's huge, right? So there's obviously importance in it. So is it possible to build a business and be massively successful without social media? Yes, it is possible. Again, depending where you started from, depending what your circumstances were. If you were born, let's say, into a super wealthy family and you have all of these opportunities and you can move quietly and make big deals and make a lot of money, great.
Correct.
But kind of for the rest of us, I think that, for kind of common people, like the everyday person who's starting from nothing, it's important. Like, I'll give you an example. One of our members, we have like an online academy and like a private members club. And one of our members is a plastic surgeon. And when I met her, we had an event about 3.5, 4 months ago. We had our first live event and we had members from all over the world fly in. And this doctor, she flew in. And when she introduced herself, I didn't know that she was a member yet, but I met her at the event and she told me I'm a board certified plastic surgeon. And I was intrigued. And she said, the reason I became a member was because 75% of my new patients come from my Instagram.
Wow.
And so she grew. And so she actually grew. She doubled her audience, since joining us just being in our community and taking advantage of the things that we offer. But it was just incredible to me because this is a surgeon. This is, you would think, why does a surgeon need social media? But when she tells me that 75% of
that is insane.
It's insane or not, it's the reality of the situation. Look, that's where the attention is. That's where the consumers are spending their time. So when you ask, is it essential? How important is it? What percentage of the average person's day are they sitting on social media?
Right.
Are they actively scrolling and consuming content? You need to be where the attention is.
Like, to me, it's such an insane, I guess, space.
Yeah.
Like, you will never think, right? Like, let's go back like 20 years ago. Would you ever think that a surgeon needs to focus on social media, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's pretty insane that, and it's a good way, in a good way, it's pretty insane that the world is shifting towards that. But I'm just, thinking in my mind right now, like holy crap, like 20 years ago, would you really think that a surgeon, now needs to be kind of like a creator and, have a good Instagram page and all that? Like, if you think about it, it's pretty insane.
Probably not 20 years ago.
Maybe more.
Sure. But even 20 years ago, I'm just not surprised anymore about the way that humanity and technology is evolving. This, to me, it's not, I don't have this like taboo around it. I don't have these preconceived notions. I'm a pretty simple person when it comes to looking at data, right? I like to live in reality. And the reality is that you have more people engaged in looking at social media on a daily basis. So whether you're a business, whether you're a doctor or a lawyer or whatever, it doesn't matter what you do. If wherever your target market is, wherever your target customer is, the people who you want to acquire as clients or customers, regardless of if you're selling a product or a service and whatever it is, you have to go to where they are. But not only to where they are, you have to go to where they're engaged. So there's different varying levels of engagement. So if you look at a billboard at the side of the road, there's still value in that impression and being seen on that billboard. Absolutely, there's value in it.
Correct.
But the amount of attention that I give a billboard as I drive by it is very different than the amount of attention I'm giving content as I'm scrolling through a social media feed, or as I'm consuming a long form YouTube video, or if I'm listening to a podcast. This is very engaged attention. So attention isn't just attention. There's varying levels. There's varying levels of quality of that attention.
What do you think about, like, let's say looking back, like we talked 20 years ago, obviously newspapers, magazines, billboards, like you mentioned. Is that still working, all those stuff, in your opinion?
Yeah, it still works. It's all part of a broad marketing mix. As I said, there are everything is an impression, meaning everything is, whether it's social media or a billboard or a television commercial or a podcast episode, everything is a piece of content being seen by a human being. So that's never going to go away. What continues to evolve with technology is the way in which presented to people, taking into account human psychology, like short form video. There was short form video before TikTok existed, right? It was just in a post on Instagram.
Yeah.
And then TikTok understood that we have to go full screen and take advantage of all that real estate, and then put an algorithm behind it so there's a feed to it. So I guess getting back to your question, like, varying types of media have varying value. It doesn't mean that there's nothing that's obsolete. I gave the example of a billboard. There's still value in a billboard. But now when an advertiser is looking, okay, how much am I going to spend? Advertisers are trying to figure out, where do I allocate my budget? Like, where do I invest? Where do I put my money? And, they can get 1 million people driving by a billboard for, let's say, X dollars, for a certain dollar amount, or they can have 10,000 people consuming a long-form podcast where they're heavily integrated into that podcast. And just because there's 1 million eyeballs, let's say, call it, versus 10,000 for the same price, they may actually be getting a worse value on the million, because those 10,000 people are much more engaged. So there's still value in the billboard, and I kind of say billboard as, in my opinion, probably the lowest form of an impression that you can get, but there's still value in it, right? So when you're looking at it from an advertiser's perspective, it's good to have a mix. It's good to have both the billboard and be on a podcast and be work with someone like Valeria for Instagram Reels. So there's value across there's value everywhere. It's wherever you're looking. I mean, you and I are sitting here and there's a logo above us. It's not in the shot, but there's a logo above us. I saw that logo and now I'm more aware of what's on that logo. And you'll
probably remember it next time. Like, you'll see it.
I may not remember it next time, I probably will because I pay more attention, I think, than the average consumer. But when somebody sees that 7 times and then they're going to need whatever that logo is selling, then they're going to think of that, right?
That's interesting. So let's talk real quick about building, I guess, a brand, an account. So let's say there is somebody there who has like 2,000 followers, right? And his goal is like to get to 10,000 followers. What would you be like the biggest 3 tips you would give him, like in terms of like just building a brand, right? Because usually that's where I think kind of like the average is like in today's days is like 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 followers.
Mm-hmm.
How would you grow that?
They have 2,000. How much content have they put out? How long have they been doing it?
That's a great question.
There's two scenarios. Sorry, there's 2 scenarios. They haven't started yet. They may have 2,000 followers because it's just their friends, just people that they know passively, and they haven't been putting out content. Or they've been putting out content, and there's a certain amount of content that already exists. There's somewhat of a body of work there, and then they need to know where to go from there. So those are 2 different scenarios. But either way, if your question is what do they do to get to grow from 2,000 to 10,000?
Correct.
So we do it it happens. First of all, it happens all the time. Like with our members, I see it happen all the time. Like I see them going from a couple of thousand to tens of thousands. I see them going from a couple of 100,000 to add another couple of 100,000.
What are those strategies that they use?
So, I mean, the strategy is really simple. Let's say, for example, if you already produce content and you have a few thousand followers and you've been putting out content, again, it's the first analysis that I do, where I look at what you're good at, what you're interested in, and where the market demand is, right? I do that assessment. But if you're already creating content, then that's as simple as going through your last 100 posts, whether they're reels or carousel posts, whatever they may be, and looking to see kind of which ones were successful, taking the top 10%, and then looking at those and trying to understand what's the common denominator of those posts. Like what are the formats that over and over again, what are the components of a piece of content that like multiple times continues to win? And then I would lay into that. And then the other part of it is really simple, is you got to be consistent with it. So you have to post, however many hours you can allocate per week, whether it's 10 hours or 50 hours or anything in between. You just have to stick to a schedule and you have to be consistent about it. So it's that analysis of your interests, your aptitudes, market demand, and also the analysis of your previous content, what it's been doing, really digging into the data, getting a little granular and seeing, because you can see on Instagram Insights what content got you more followers, right? So now each reel, you can actually see how many followers they produce. And the ratio of followers to views, it changes depending on format. You can have a video that gets like 100,000 views and only gets 100 followers. You can have a video that gets 10,000 views and gets 1,000 followers. So you have to do that analysis. And once you do that analysis, then it's really about executing on that and continuously putting out the content.
Interesting. I want to talk to you for a sec. I know you guys helping a lot of people like that, but I personally know a lot of people that want to have a good brand, want people to know them, want to be famous.
Sure.
But they have a couple of stuff. First of all, they're scared from the camera. Second of all, they have these big doubts of I don't want those people to talk about me. I don't want, them to kind of talk about me or whatever. And then the third thing, they're just, not confident about themselves. How do you deal with that? What are some advices would you give to people that are in those situations?
Well, I would say that, so first of all, I think one of the largest barriers, hold on, let me back up. The psychological game, that's probably the biggest hurdle, because what I mentioned before in terms of the analysis, I believe anybody could do that with the right guidance.
Correct.
They can do that. In terms of posting on a regular basis, with a sufficient amount of discipline, you can push through on the days that you don't feel like doing it, and you can still do it. So that can be done. So those are relatively, I wouldn't say low barriers to entry, kind of the data analysis and the execution, but those are barriers that most people, if they really want it bad enough, they can push through. The larger component, and now, we deal with, I've been working with Valeria and I've been helping her, and working together and coaching her the last 8 years to get past a lot of these, which, you're talking about a lot of it is psychological,
correct,
emotional.
Yeah.
And now we work with hundreds of, creators. As of 5 months ago, we started, and I'm I'm seeing it over and over again. It is this kind of this concern that they have. So the first thing that people are concerned about is, what is everyone going to think? So what are my friends, especially in the beginning stages, what are my friends going to think? So look, I'm at a stage in my life at my age where I just don't care anymore. I remember what it felt like to care what people think, and I remember how debilitating it was, like how much it crippled me and not wanting to do things because I was scared about what people would think. This is something that you have to, it's an internal battle and you have to fight it. And at the end of the day, I had one of our members contact me, and she said, she asked me to get on a call with me. And so I took the call with her, and, she's at just over 1,000 followers. And she was like, I have a big problem. I said, what's the big problem? She goes, my sister-in-law is really abusive because she makes fun of me about what I'm doing. And I said, well, what's your sister-in-law doing? And she goes, nothing. She doesn't do anything. And I said, there's your answer. Right? So it really is a matter of pushing yourself through. I wish I could like give you the magic pill to tell you how to make it so people stop thinking of you or stop caring about what people think. But from my perspective, the way to do it is to execute, to put out the work, to concentrate on output, to concentrate on doing the posts. There's no other way that I know of to get past it than to actually do the work and to actively do your best to control those intrusive thoughts about what people think. And here's the reality.
No, it's all good.
So here's the reality. They actually don't care. They don't care. So most of it you're fabricating. Like, it's not real. None of it's real, So it's not real anyways. Nobody cares.
I think it's actually the perfect way what you just mentioned, that by doing it, you will get basically, past that scaredness or whatever that is, because I can say that it's literally happened to me. I started with like social media, I think it was like 2 years ago. And it wasn't like I was scared. It's not like you kind of scared like, oh, somebody's going to do something to me. You just don't feel comfortable. And I remember like the first couple of days, I was like, the first time I took a story and like, oh shit, what is everybody going to talk about me and all that. But then after like 2-3 months, you're like, oh, now I feel more comfortable. And after like a year, you're like, you get to exactly your point where you're like, don't really care about anything. You just want to put the content out there. And deep down that, what you're doing is good. It's going to help people. And the rest is history, basically.
The initial hurdle is the hardest time. It's the start. That's the hardest part, because before you have any kind of success, what's going to happen is people are going to judge you. And your close family members may say something to you that potentially stops you. But what happens is when you get any form of success, then the conversation shifts very quickly, because people who were laughing at Valeria in the beginning and who were kind of like talking behind her back, or even told her, Valeria, like, what are you doing? Like, this is ridiculous. Like, you're putting yourself out there. You're doing all this. Like, you're showing people what you're wearing. Nobody cares what you're wearing. Okay, well now, her outfit videos get 1 million+ views every single time.
Now they're asking her how she's doing it.
Now they're asking, they're asking for a job now, right? But, and Valeria generates millions of dollars a year in revenue. So I guess once you have success at any scale, then a lot of that just goes away. And I see it even with our members, where, they start out in a couple of months, they already have their first kind of brand partnership, or they're being paid, or they get invited to an amazing event, or, something happens, something meaningful happens. And then all of a sudden their mindset shifts, and they understand that, there's an artist, his name is Connor Price. He's a rapper, and my kids love him. He's in his 30s, but his audience is much younger. We went to his concert, and in one of his song lyrics, he said, something like to the effect of, I don't see people winning who are leaving negative comments. And that goes for the comment section, that goes for DMs, and that goes for real life, comments that people make to you. That, like,
I agree with that.
Yeah.
So we talked about, obviously you're mentioning a lot, Valeria and her success. How, let's say there is a young lady, a young guy, whatever, and they look at Valeria, or they look at you guys and like, like, oh, wow, like that's interesting how they were able to get so much success from social media. What would you say, as a content creator, the best tips to secure a brand deal?
It just goes back to what I was talking about. You have to be consistent with your content. So that content planning and deciding on your formats and executing on it, that's what they look for. So we're partners with a company, they're called Humans. They're actually an Israeli startup, Humanz. and they connect brands and creators, and they represent a lot of brands to the creators. So they will work with brands, and they will decide which creators that they're going to approach to do partnerships with, to present them with opportunities. And in general, whether you're working kind of between the brand and the creator, and you're assessing a creator, or whether you're the brand directly, because a lot of them have their own internal influencer marketing teams, when a brand is looking at a creator's work, so they're looking at a couple of things. If first of all, they're looking at the quality of the work, and quality is subjective. It doesn't mean you have to have like huge production quality. You have to have a professional set and all of this stuff. They're just looking for quality, meaning, is it connecting with audience? Even if it's you're filming inside of your bathroom and you're talking to the camera, is the lighting good? Is there, again, the production quality is one thing, but are you creating content that connects? Are you able to do that? And that's, they'll look at that. Then what they'll do is they'll look at the comments, and they'll see, are people engaging with your content? And then they're going to see, are you responding? So what is the quality of your connection with the audience? And by the way, these are all things you can control, right? As a creator, you can control the quality of your content, meaning, does it connect with audience, right? I define quality content by its ability to connect. So are you creating quality content with that definition? Is your audience engaged? Are they commenting? You can't control that, but if your content is of high quality, meaning it connects, then they will be leaving comments. So you indirectly control if they're commenting. Then are you responding to them? So that's what a brand and an agency for a brand looks for when deciding whether to reach out to a creator to do a brand deal. Because your question is how do you get brand deals? So these are things you can control: content quality, engagement with your audience, responding to your audience, consistency. So a brand or an agency will look, how often are you posting and how consistent are you? Are you posting daily? Or what does that look like in terms of your consistency? So they're just looking for that consistency. They're looking for the quality of your connection with the audience. They're looking for like, if you are responding to them, if you're responding to audience in the comment section, if you're doing all of those things. And on top of that, if your content actually performs, and your content will perform if over a reasonably long period of time, like months, you are consistent, then you're appealing to brands. So the way to get your brand deals, to your point, is consistent amount of content, engaging with your audience, building a connection with your audience, and you get noticed by brands.
So would you say, as a content creator is looking to get a brand deal, would you say the best thing is to reach out to them, or I guess there is a website that they use to kind of, match? Or
the best thing, if you want to get brand deals, is create value. So a lot of creators will want brand deals before they've created any value, which, if you think about it, is ridiculous, right? Like, why would anybody pay anybody else if there's no value? So again, I go back to the things that are under their control: the content creation, the engagement, all of those things that they do. So that's the best way to get brand deals. In terms of, like, I think your question was, should they reach out to brands?
Correct.
Well, if they haven't built any value, what are they reaching out with? Unless there's a body of work, unless there's an audience. So there's two types of creators. It's like high level from a monetization perspective. If you're already kind of at more advanced stages and you've built an audience, and that audience is engaged, a lot of the value of what you're doing is not only in the production of your content, but it's also in the exposure to your audience. So people who have thousands, tens of thousands of followers, brands want to get to your audience because they want them as buyers for their product or service. So that's one type of monetization. The other type of monetization is UGC, which is user-generated content. So you can have 100 followers, but if your content is really good, if it resonates, then brands will want to hire you to create content, not to reach your audience because it's too small, but to create that content and put it out on their own social media. So those are the two kind of ways to monetize. But again, like, if you want to appeal to either type of those advertisers who want you for UGC or who want you to reach your audience, you have to have a body of work. You have to have created some value. No one is going to pay you to reach an audience if you don't have a big audience, or any kind of an audience. Why would they pay you? If your content is not great, why would they pay you to create content? So you have to build value.
So essentially, like, as a starting creator, like, your main focus should be totally on bringing value, and then you will, like, possibly will think about.
You have to create value. You have to create a body of work. You have to show consistency. You have to interact with your audience. These are all essentials. Look, it's like building a house, right?
Yep.
I don't know. Like
You have to have your
I don't know. You got to lay a
foundation.
foundation. You got to put bricks, mortar. You got to do stuff.
Can't expect the house to be a house before.
Of course not. Are you going to go live on an empty field?
Yeah.
You're going to just sit, put it on your blanket, and say, good night? Like, no.
When is the a moment as a creator that you're like, you know what? I think I have built value. I've gave out value to the audience, and I think I deserve some type of brand. Like as a creator, how do you know it's like, all right, it's time for me to get something, or you just waiting until one day somebody reach out to you?
Typically, the brands contact you. I have a lot of creators ask me, like, how do I go outbound? Give me a template. What do I say to, and I said this just yesterday. I was talking to a creator. If you spend your effort creating value in the form of good content, the brands will come to you. So if you were going to spend 8 hours sending out emails to brands to try to get brands to engage with you and to allocate budget to you and to pay you for what you do, you're far better off taking those 8 hours and creating content or getting better at your respective field, getting more knowledge in the subject matter that you're an expert in. If you have a podcast, it's reaching out to somebody who you think will be a good guest on your podcast that you can create a compelling episode with. So my suggestion to creators is, rather than reaching out to brands and offering your services and trying to get paid, which seems logical because you think if I put 8 hours into doing that, that's going to get me my highest yield in terms of dollars. But if you can delay gratification for a little bit and put that 8 hours into actually creating value in all of the ways that we talked about, you'll actually create inbound interest. And I'll tell you that we have an outbound sales person. We have a person like a sales associate.
Reach out to brands?
Yeah, so we have on the Valeria Inc. So we have our creator method side, and we have 4 full-time people. Creator method, because it's a fairly new business. But on Valeria Inc., which is the organization that manages and develops Valeria's personal brand, there's 12 or 14 people. And of those people, 3 people are involved in business development. And so only about maybe 2 years ago, we started going outbound. And even now, the revenue that we generate, and as I mentioned, it's millions of dollars a year, the revenue that we generate with brand partnerships with Valeria, 92% of them are probably from inbound. And and this is important for creators, we see a direct correlation when Valeria has a piece of content that hits, that gets higher than average, we see an influx of inbound interest.
Like all of a sudden, a lot more reaching out to you guys.
It's not all of a sudden. It's when a piece of content hits. So if her average views per video is, I don't know, 600, 700, 1 million views, when we have a video that does
50, for example.
50 is a little. We've had videos that do 50. That's not very common. But it does 5 million, 6 million, which is more common. We see an increase in inbound interest. So my point is that instead of spending those 8 hours going out and knocking on doors for brands, this is a very different business, right? This is very different than the guy who's the contractor, who he has to knock on doors and show his or her portfolio of work to say, hey, look at my portfolio of work. There's a simple formula there, meaning the more doors you knock on, the more meetings you get. There's a funnel that you can understand. If I knock on this many doors, eventually after 8 hours of work, I'm going to get this many contracts, and I'll generate on average, my dollar amount per contract is this much. This is how much money I'll make. That's I understand that business model. This is very different. This is the more value I create on my social media, the more they come to me. And that's what a lot of creators don't understand, because they've grown up with that business model. They've grown up with their mom or dad who had a business to say, okay, the more sales calls I make, the more money, we'll make. But it's kind of flipped when it comes to social media.
So I want to ask you something a little bit more kind of in the bigger picture. How do you see creators, how do you see creators get monetized, especially starting creators, right? So I get it, there's a lot of big people already that are been doing it for years, but there is somebody that, want to start, call it like a brand for himself or whatever, just a personal page. He grow it out, he has maybe 10,000 followers, but he wants to start getting paid for that. Obviously, he's putting a lot of time into it. He's focusing 100% on his craft, and he wants to get monetized from that. What would your some of best advice?
So if you already have 10,000 followers and you're not getting people contacting you for brand partnerships, that means whatever content you're creating doesn't lend itself to brand partnerships. So you either have to start creating content that does lend itself to brand partnerships, and I'll be really transparent. For men, it's different because when women create content, let's say for example with their outfits, then what's going to happen there? What's going to happen is fashion brands are going to want to integrate their clothing. When you're getting hundreds of thousands or 1 million plus views on every video, brands are saying, okay, I want to be in this video. But there's one example. There's one guy, I forgot his name. I actually follow him, Costa or maybe. Anyways, he has like a couple of million followers. He does like men's fashion. He talks about fragrances, watches. So there's a way for brands to integrate into his content. If let's say someone has 10,000 followers and it's a guy, because you're mentioning like if it's a man, and let's say he's doing content that doesn't have fashion or anything like that, then he has to look at what he can do in order to get interest from brands. Now, he also has to look at not alternative, but like other forms of monetization other than brand deals. Brand deals are not the only way that people monetize, right? And by the way, there's also women who don't do outfits and beauty, and there's a lot of women who don't. I was talking yesterday to one of our members who's a therapist, and she's creating, she's doing she's developing her social media, and she's working on a book deal, right? So there's different ways to monetize. So back to your question, if you have 10,000 followers, right? You have 10,000 followers, you're not monetizing from brand deals. You can only do two things. If you want brand deals, you have to start creating content that'll lend itself well to brand deals. But I'm just telling you, there's not a lot of like male creators who are getting like fashion deals, or maybe there are. I just don't play in that world, so I can't really.
Yeah, I get what you're saying.
And just when you're on social media as a man, I'm not seeing a lot of that. I would figure I would get that in my feed. I would get that. So you can do that. So let's say if you can't do that, then you have to ask yourself, okay, I have 10,000 followers. What knowledge do I have? So what kind of a course can I create? What kind of a private community can I create? So there's other ways that you can monetize, maybe not from brand deals, but you can monetize directly with your audience. You can create a summit. You can create an event. There's a number of different things that you can do. I mean, we don't have to look too far. Look at Alvaro.
Correct.
Right?
They're doing
Alvaro,
an amazing job.
They're doing amazing. But Alvaro does get brand deals. He's an exception, but he has a lot of scale. He has over 1 million followers. But they have their events when they're doing great with their events, and they're providing a ton of value in their events. So you have to get creative. Brand deals are just one type of way. But again,
there's more ways to sing. A lot more.
There's book deals. There's courses. There's private communities. There's events.
There's cool communities that I'm hearing right now that it's popping out.
Yeah.
As well. Gary? I want more to dive. I know we kind of talked about content creation and social media. So we are here in the Tom Talk Success podcast, and I want to ask you personally, what does success means to you? Like, how do you see it?
It's not material things anymore. It used to be when I was a younger man. It used to be material things. For me, success is freedom. It's freedom because I no longer get joy, or I get a very small amount of joy from material things. Like if I get another watch, I don't care. If I get another car, I don't care. Maybe a second motorcycle would make me happy right now. But it's not the material things. It really comes down to freedom. It's being able to wake up in the morning and do whatever I want and go wherever I want. Like we're going in January, we're going to Costa Rica for 12 days. And the freedom to be able to, and we're still going to be working, but the freedom to be able to do that and just pick up and go. Right now, the only thing that holds me back from geographic freedom is the fact that my kids are in school. But there was like this really sweet spot when the kids weren't, they were too young. And so we would just go wherever we wanted. So we took advantage of that. But yeah, I mean, success to me is, it's freedom and it's security. It's freedom and it's security. And it's the ability to say one day, if I don't want to work anymore, which I don't think I'll ever say that. But if I ever say to myself, I just want to take a
chill.
year and do nothing. Or I want to work on myself. I want to work on my fitness for a year. I want to work on my well-being. I want to go and find myself in India with like a spiritual, whatever,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
If I want to do that, then I want the freedom to do that. And I don't want to have to worry about like, do I have to hustle this month to pay my bills? So to me, that's really what success means.
First of all, wow, pretty inspiring, man.
And by the way, sorry to cut you
Okay.
off. It's no longer about, and I go back to kind of the beginning of the conversation, I truly don't care what people think. That allows both me and Valeria to put out as much content as we do. More Valeria than me because we don't care. And so for me, when you talk about success, it's not to gain material things or to show status anymore. I foolishly pursued that when I was younger because I didn't know any better, because that was the community that I grew up in. You and I culturally come from the same place.
Yeah.
And so it was a lot of that. Now I don't care about that anymore. So that's very freeing.
Interesting. Gary, last question here. First of all, amazing tips, amazing. I'm sure we brought a lot of good value to the audience. What do you think, what was some of the advice you will give back to yourself, looking back at your life? What was some of the stuff you will do differently?
What I would do differently is I wouldn't be concentrating on short-term success as much. I would be less kind of in fight or flight mode when I was younger. And I would concentrate on the long game. I would realize the power of delayed gratification. I would understand that it's not important for me in my 20s or, to have that nice car. I would have said to myself, it's okay, I can delay that because it's not important. So that's what it is. I think it's just looking more at long term. I'm much more in everything that we do now. It's much more like long term. Like now I'm thinking even like generational. I'm thinking about, for my wife and for my children. I'm thinking in terms of what's going to happen in 20 years. So I'm thinking now more in terms of like decades versus like months.
Gary, thank you so much, man.
Thanks, Tom.
I really enjoyed the podcast. Like I said, I think we brought a lot of good value to the audience. And Gary, if you can just tell them how they can find you and what's your Instagram.
Yeah, they can find me at Gary Lipovetsky. That's my Instagram handle. They can find Valeria at Valeria Lipovetsky. And Creator Method, they can find at creator.method. Because Creator Method wasn't available, the handle.
Gary, thank you so much.
Thanks, Tom.
Pleasure of you guys. Guys, don't forget to follow Tom Talk Success and Tom Grobman on Instagram. We are on all the platforms: YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify. You guys can check it out. It's great. Gary, thanks again, and I'll see you guys on the next episode.